Hi, this is Dr. Scott Young with Derek Johnson today. This is part two, and we're talking a little bit about some current event issues. And we're also going to talk about a NESARA because you guys didn't catch how we were talking for about 90 minutes with you guys, but we talked on for like 90 minutes afterward here. And by the way, I realized on Monday I had a sinus infection. I've been coughing for a long while here, and then I started spitting up some junk. So, I've had long, fun trips with sinus infections, and I realized it on Monday, so I got on some meds. So I've been having a lot of fun. You know how fun sinus infections are. So anyway, so my voice might sound a little bit funky with that too. So anyway. Um, so let's just jump off here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good too. I had been dealing with sinus stuff too, so I sounded stuff the other day, but I'm doing a lot better.
Well, I mean, were you in the studio the other day or today or what?
I was actually I was riding this week, so I was riding with the legendary. I call him legendary Billy Falcon. So he's had a lot of Bon Jovi songs. So a really cool guy. So we got a cool little number down. We're getting that touching the edges around, but we got a cool number down for what we're dealing with. So
Wow.
we're gonna try to get it to President Trump for some of these rallies once I get it done. So we'll see what happens.
Most people don't know I started as a vocal performance major, at UNC Greeley up there. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't have my voice that I used to have anymore because of this cough issues. And I'm really looking forward to getting it back here. So, yeah,
It's
so.
pretty cool. I've met two UNC Greeley alumni, not while I was living there, but outside of. It's really cool. I know someone from Nashville who graduated there.
And then weird.
So
It's just totally weird, when
yeah.
Kathy and I were talking about it, she was like, "What, UNC?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." And she goes, "CSU." And I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, like, duh. I mean, if you live in Colorado, you know exactly what that is. So, it's
Exactly.
words. So,
And that's how I met Kathy. I lived in Fort Collins doing my master's degree at CSU. So really cool.
yeah, it's
So,
awesome, guys. Okay, so I know you were joking about something, and someone brought up this comment, and went back and forth, like, that there was an or Ohio National Guard, and I thought you wanted to hit that one up too. So you got to, people don't get
yeah.
you. They don't get your flat affect, with that.
Well, I post as my brain thinks, and I know that you have to know my humor to know what I was doing, and what it is in the early days of me going viral, and everybody was like, "Who's this guy? Where did he come from? How's he know all this stuff?" Da 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 da. In the wake of the onset of the new, you know, at first I was dealing with trolls from the standpoint of I would address them, and like, hey, da da da. And so in my mind, what I do, sort of joking like, hey, here's Australia over here in the Gulf of Mexico. I guess they're dropping off all the vaccinated kangaroos they don't want. So I started doing
Oh
stuff like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
making jokes like, what is an Australian aircraft doing all the way over here? When people would saying this stuff ain't happening. So what I do sometimes with humor, like when Canada's down here, oh, thank you, more maple syrup, finally, you know,
Exactly.
things like that. So I started making humor with it because some people, in order to engage them, I had people say just throw nuggets out, and I'm like, no, you can't throw nuggets with some of this stuff. You just have to pause the video, see all the information.
That's
So what I
right.
started doing was using humor in a different way, going, okay, well, if people don't believe this is happening, then what are all these aircraft doing? But the Ohio thing was it was a post about the Ohio National Guard were down in Georgia, and I'm like, well, what's the Ohio National Guard doing down in Georgia? Because clearly Georgia don't have a National Guard, or wherever it was. I said that the state, or it may have been someone over in Ohio. I'm
Right.
like, clearly because Ohio don't have their own National Guard, so therefore it was a joke, meaning that it proves Donald Trump He's the one that was a direct military order, and it
Sure.
was a federal order where he federalized the National Guard active duty. That order is active until March 2024. So therefore, as long as Donald Trump is living and breathing, that's what I always do. If you're breathing, if he's breathing, he's got full command because that's how
Right.
the military works. Yeah, that's what made him a wartime president. So I joke because so many people every single day. So when I first went viral, I had a couple of veterans out there. They were trying to tell people in a comment box, this is a crock of crap. The National Guard could be out of their states. I'm like, state emergencies. The governors have
Right.
control of the National Guard for state emergencies only. The only way a state can be out of their state operating federal. The president does that. Sorry, that's just how orders work. So where the orders come from? Well, the only order we have in place right now is Donald Trump's order that's visual for the public to read that the National Guard, 1 million National Guard, were federalized to active duty. That order reads as if, and it was extended 2 years in a row, so it's out to March 2024. So instead of just doing that all the time, I started going for the and I know it's not me addressing the trolls. It's just going, hey, here's you another way of looking at it.
Right.
Ohio, you don't have a national guard, so yeah, they have a national
Of
guard.
course
So
they do.
what
Right.
is this state? What is this state doing over in Ohio? They have to be federally activated for that. So,
Right.
and it's every single day. Right now, we have National Guard and helicopters all over the U.S. out of their state jurisdictions in other states
Guys,
as we speak.
aren't you
It's there.
hearing it? Aren't you here? I mean, I'm hearing it all the time going
It's
over
every
my
day.
little tiny patch over here. They're like big old nasty helicopters. And this isn't like the helicopters that are going to flight for life kind of stuff. Okay. I can't even run out there and get to them in time. Yeah, it's the
There's
big
a
old
lot
nasty
of
ones.
there's a lot of CH-40. There's a lot of 47s Chinooks up right now. A lot of Chinooks all over. UH-60 Blackhawks, the UH-72, the Lakotas. There's a lot of those up in the sky right now. Uh, and those aren't just like I said. Those aren't just like oh yeah they're training. No, they're training all right, but they're training for something else.
Yeah.
That's all outlined in the continuity directives. So and it's every single day. Sure, National Guard, each state has a clause where it says 2 weeks of active duty, but
Right.
I've got 2 years worth every single day out of the states and out of the country. No, different scenario. So
Well, and I
it's
think
happening.
I think the other thing too that most people don't realize is that, I think about like what do you call it? I think of Roger Stone's response when he was, and CNN was sitting outside of his house within, 15 minutes notice kind of thing. And then you had issues of them swatting him, at 4 in the morning. And I just kind of remembered that kind of time frame and talking to my military contacts, and it's the perfect time to hit them in that time frame. Now that was just way overwrought, to for kind of older guy like me or whatever, to kind of go in there in a crazy time frame like that, but I think about that when you guys are struggling and you're going, nothing's happening. When you hear one of those helicopters, I just want you to think about a bad boy being taken away. I just want you to buck up and go, that's a bad boy being taken away, or they're going toward him right now. And I think if you think of it that way, you might just kind of calm down a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, those federal continuity directives, they have an answer for all of them. I mean, it's amazing when I say people when you read them, and they don't read hard. They're not legal terms you've never heard in your life. These are straight up directives. They're not even legal. They're legal in the sense of their .gov site, sure, but this it's nothing. It's not a legal order. These are saying, hey, emergency response groups, emergency relocation groups. This is what they're going to be doing, and it's got all these things in there. It talks about chemical explosions. It talks about the basic essential functions of what the executive branch is supposed to do, what the legislative branch. It's very easy read in the sense of you're not going to see something in there that I don't understand this, because they also have an acronym down here it shows what the acronyms mean and the definitions of that word. And so it's like if you don't know what that word means, you need a full definition. They put that in there too, which is what's amazing. I mean,
Right.
so
So when
so
you
it,
think
it
about
it does.
when you think about like Trump and how he's moving around, and then we hear these doomsday, and you put a doomsday pick out there with a flight going over. Can you differentiate that for us? Because there's also a conversation about Air Force Two that might have been happening, and I don't want to say the state because I don't want to get in there, or I don't want to say the place, but it's in Nevada, and it's like, wait a second, like because that's not Kamala, and don't worry about that. And obviously, Pence is not a part of this whole thing. So kind of going, wait a second, and I know there was also a TFR in the Nevada area too over the last, little while. So could you talk a little bit about that?
I know, we're going to get into Jasar and NESARA, but even Charlie Ward said when you see a lot of talk around a certain place in Nevada, uh, you know, I believe you can say it because it's Reno. When you have a
Sure.
certain topic, or when you start seeing a lot of movement there, then you'll know what's going on in America based off what he taught quantum. And we're going to let you get on your rattle trap later with that, which is going to be awesome because I've built a lot of people up ready for this and what you're going to say. But so the important thing with these aircraft is the fact that one, like the Doomsday plane, that it's in the sky right now. There's two of them in the sky as we speak. It's on flight radar right now too. One with the call sign Flash 99, the other one Gordo 14. Anybody knows Spanish, that means fat 14. And but it's a big aircraft. It You can Google this; it's not secret, but it operates at $159,525 an hour to operate it. That's how
Wow.
much cash it takes. So, talk about we're not addressing souls on this show, but joking, like there were like in the early onset when I first went viral and this started, you got all these veterans out there. Oh, that plane trains. Not every single day. It doesn't train flying over to England like it did last week. No, like it's at 150. We're talking about taxpayer money, even though it's a defense budget. That's still coming out of the taxes as of what we know, not what we're going to as we know.
Right.
But when you think about it, $160,000 an hour to operate. No, they don't just fly to England and back. And no, they use a lot of that for optics because who was over there. But we know that Biden's not real. Anybody knows anything that's been going on, which we don't have to rehash all that. But let's see all our other shows for that. But it's like that aircraft is the nuclear aircraft. It's a command post for the National Command Authority, and so it houses that thing can stay in the air. Can't remember how long without even being refueled. I could pull it up here and we could look at it, but it's truly it's the presidential aircraft for nuclear disaster. And so it's like without scaring people and not trying to just, the nuclear, but President Trump's been doing what a lot that Joe Biden's leading us to a nuclear disaster. Well, this is
Right.
all optics, right? This is all optics leading us into the big event because what the big event actually is actually outlining those continuity directives in a
Correct.
different way. It shows you chemical explosions in there. It shows you disasters in there that would say, train derailment. That's a disaster. So what they're doing is preparing for this massive big event, which President Trump put out yesterday. Another video.
I
And the
know.
video is a pre-recorded. And they all look the same. He's wearing the same setting. They're recorded, which means he would have done these a long time ago and dropped on a timely manner. Right? He didn't do that yesterday, even though we know he wears the same suit and tie a lot. No, these were all pre-recorded. They're all timely drops. And his speech yesterday was about these camps out there that they're going to have for homeless and for homeless veterans and how we're going to rehabilitate our homeless. We're going to rehabilitate But he said, for law-abiding citizens, it is a disgrace for law-abiding citizens who do everything the right way our whole lives to have to walk down a city and see the filth and the corruption we
Right.
see just laying on the streets. And then the homeless people, even though some couldn't help it per se because of way our economy became because of career politicians, but some of these people, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, then it becomes even more filthier. And then also it's their lives being destroyed. All right. So he's saying what? We're one step closer to that big event. The big event's going to be when the National Guard goes in and they do what he said also, we're going to decimate street crime by 75 and 85%. He said that November the 15th, 2022. He also said that that's when the night he talked about he said, we're going to put our beautiful flag on the surface of Mars. He did like he wasn't talking about the flag, military auxiliary radio system, right? And then in his CPAC speech and Waco speech and other speeches, he said, we're going to completely obliterate the deep state, which they've already done. As you and I know, this is the aftermath.
Right.
Everybody's having to watch the rollout of it. But the big event is going to be at one voice. This is why the Army and the Navy transfer all communications to the Space Force for one command. Who's the commander? Continuity government's like this. The continuity government, as it reads, you have your courts, your Congress, and you have your executive branch. Well, it shows you essential functions. So there's some things you can't help. Fires. You can't help tornadoes, hurricanes, things of that nature that are natural disasters. And those continuity directives talk about, okay, those are the essential functions that we have to get through, as well as what they're planning on doing on top of this. So you have your essential functions of your government that has to be to keep the constitutional form and keep moving forward, as well as this extra continuity government. So, like, for example, the defense budget, the National Defense Authorization Act, that's something that Congress and the president would do, right? They present that, and that's like the $770 billion defense budget. Well, that's a continuity of government. Just because Biden signed that does not mean that Biden is president. It doesn't mean that Biden is real. It doesn't mean that Biden supports the Space Force, the Air Force, the Navy, or whomever. That function would be a function that is a continuity of government because that's a defense budget. Defense budget means all branches. There's two words, though, that Biden's never mentioned out of his mouth, ever. It's a Space Force.
Right.
Right. So, and so you have people out there who think because he signed this defense budget that's him supporting the Space Force. No, that's a continuity of government. That's an essential function because that's a defense budget for all branches. Right. And so what they're doing, the Army, the Navy transfers all communications to the Space Force. And it specifically says on spaceforce.mil for one command. Well, if Biden's never mentioned the words Space Force out of his mouth, Air Force didn't give him the traditional ride into D.C. on January the 20th, 2021. So there's your Air Force.
Right.
Space Force is the division of the Air Force. Then the Army gave him a full-blown funeral service on January 20th, 2021. So there's the Army covered. So all your branches are covered because the Marines are Department of the Navy, right? So when you look at Article 2 of the Constitution, it specifically says the president is commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy, right? And the Coast Guard, we know what the Coast Guard has a clause in there. They operate as and under the Navy during times of war. So all branches are covered, right? So when you look at the big event, one voice, the communications, and when you go read those federal continuity directives, it talks about 42 U.S. code. Then you have to go look at different things under it, the Telecommunications Act of 96. They all add up. Right. But they weren't going to put all this all in one thing because that would show you all the answers. So when you see one little thing in there, you got to go Google it and go, well, that's what this is. And then go Google what it says under it because they all tie in, all these numbers, these codes, etc. So the big event is going to be the one voice. The National Guard is going to swarm these cities. They're going to clean up the streets and then street gangs. President Trump said that November 15th, the same night. He said, we're going to decimate street crime by 75 to 85%. That's a massive number. That's martial law talk. That's the only way we could do that is martial law. And then when you add up the speeches, and then like yesterday, he's not even addressing that anymore. Now we're getting close. He's addressing the homeless, the veterans. Well, that's also still military because military has what? We have medics. We have people who know how to handle delicacies like that. Like if someone's laying on the street, and maybe their leg's broken, or they got in a fight, or they got cut, or whatever it is, they know how to handle those. They know how to move those by law and order too. That way they don't get sued. But this is going to be one of those massive sweeps, but they got to do it all at once because they're also knocking out street crime. So you don't want those people to run and hide, because that's what terrorists do. Terrorists and crime, they want to shoot and run. They don't want to stand there face to face, and it's never that. So they're not going to do Chicago one day, Detroit the next. No, that's why all these aircraft are swarming, and I think what you and I and different people believe, I believe that most of us believe that the scare event is what's going to have to be the thing that makes the people who are not aware of what's going on go, okay,
Stop.
military move in.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because we're seeing a lot of that fake false flag kind of thing. Look over here, don't look at what I'm doing over here. And we're seeing some of that even in Congress doing their things, and the Senate doing their little things. And unfortunately, the ugly false flags of the shootings, and some of those things, some of those are probably very real, some of those are possibly fake. We don't know which one. And the problem is that they all have a narrative related to them because of that false flag point.
Some are retaliations.
Correct. And some of them are real
low level
things.
Rats.
Right.
Yeah. Low level rats retaliate.
Right.
Trying to make it look bad on the good people for the greater good. And those few people out there who are like, what's going on? They're trying to sway those people.
Right.
And create more division and more confusion. Right.
There was a shooting, and I don't remember what it was, but it was a shooting at a car. It was called Multiple Fatalities. And it was a guy pulled over and he got mad. It must have had some issue. Shoots a couple into another car, and I'm going, that's like a road rage thing. But now we're elevating it to, multiple fatality kind of thing. And, we're not even talking about a road rage kind of thing. So, sometimes you're not really hearing the right information. And I'm sure you get that. I get that on my Telegram channel a lot. And then with my chat channel, they struggle with that kind of stuff. And I'm going, what you think you're hearing isn't exactly what you're hearing.
That's right. Well, that's why, I don't work with dates, because I don't have dates, first off. But it's like, but when people read this is how your government works. Here's your laws, your orders. Now, has government always been good? No, we have proof of that. That's why our founders said we needed checks and balances. That's why we have to be involved in this every single day. But it's also why you do have to know what the government says. That's why you have to know the .gov, the Federal Register.gov. All this information is public. Therefore, if it's public, it means you can have it, you can attain it, you can hold it, you can read it and put it here. But also, that's what's going to help you discern from the propaganda and the drama, because there's a lot of influencers that shouldn't be influencers, right? They gain a platform. There's a lot of them that say stuff that just reels you in just enough, right? They're talking on the topic. They got some stuff. It's surface talk. But when you go read those continuity directives, .gov sites, everything I've put out there, .gov or .mil, officials. And that's what helps people discern and go, okay, because what I solely operate off of are all those laws and orders in place. And that's how I'm able to hear a President Trump speech and decode it. I'm not decoding it, but he's not saying something that's secretive that you absolutely can't know. He's saying stuff that if you know these laws and orders and these directives, and you know a little bit of military, or you have a military personnel who could say, hey, Mars, you don't mean the red ball, that's a military auxiliary radio system. Those little things you might would have not known had he not known a military personnel.
Correct.
But everything else, everybody could decode his speeches if you know these laws and orders, because they all back those, and it backs the Constitution. And I always bring up Madison, Marbury versus Madison, 1803. That was 14 years after the Constitution was put into place. And here we have a founding father having to go into the court and tell, hey, if this statute that bears the appearance of a law doesn't support and back the Constitution, it's null and void.
Right.
And that was 14 years after the Constitution. So think about where we are now, 230 plus years removed, what it looks like. So no, not all laws back the Constitution, not all, and that's what Donald Trump and the military are doing. They're having to use laws that these corrupt people put into place to reverse the system out. So it's no different than coders and different people. Coders have to go in and read the code. It may not be good, but they have to read it in order to know, okay, well, here's how you reverse this code out. This is what you have to do. It's like anything else. You know, you learn a bad habit. Well, once you learn something, it takes just about double and triple to unlearn it and to get out of that habit than it did you creating that habit. So what Donald Trump and the military are doing when he says, hey, they're going to investigate me, they're going to investigate every president before me immediately.
Right.
So just like the phone call with Ukraine, right? The reason why Trump had to be indicted is to open up other indictments, right? So when he's vindicated for that phone call, guess who else is going to be vindicated for a phone call in history? Nixon, right? So we're going to see a lot of corruption that had, and it goes back to like Roosevelt. Roosevelt had to guilt Congress. He had to guilt them in the sense of like, not in a bad way. He had to say, hey, look, last I checked, I'm commander in chief of the military. Who's going to listen to me? Is the military going to listen to y'all, or are they going to listen to me? Which one is it? So he had to give them. He said, look, we got to act with the Constitution. Now, some people can argue, was that good or bad? That's not what I'm debating. What I'm saying is, Congress gave Roosevelt the power to restructure the executive branch for a president to declare war. And it became the first War Powers Act, or the War Powers Act of 1941. It's got two names. And then the second War Powers Act. Well, those acts became 50 United States Code. And that's what Donald Trump used. It specifically says in 50 U.S. Code, Chapter 33, Section 1541, when a president cannot enforce a law, he can declare national emergencies to declare a war. All right. So that Donald Trump didn't write that. Congress and the president way back here. Right. But then what shows Congress went to a whole new level of corruption was when in 1951, how come Congress put term limits on the president, but they didn't put it on Congress?
Right.
Right.
And it was in vogue with Korea too, when they called it just the Korean conflict. And then that's when the elites.
But they didn't want another president like Roosevelt.
Exactly. See? When they were expanding it. Right.
They didn't want another Roosevelt. They didn't want another Truman. They didn't want another Eisenhower. Right. Because these guys got things done. Right. They were like, okay, well, you know, we need to act based off the Constitution. And that's what the Roosevelt said. It's my duty and my right under Article 2 of the Constitution as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy. Right. So, you know, whether people thought World War II is right or wrong, that's not what we're here about. What we're saying is this is where the power came in. But then he's the last president to be sworn in under the original inauguration date, which was March the 4th, not January 20th. And also, he was in his 13th year as president. He died in office in his fourth term, 13 years. So once again, people have to know that Roosevelt was he was in his 13th year when he passed in office. Right. So in 1951, which was just 10 years later from 41, obviously, it's when Congress was going, yep, they voted on it. Yeah, sure, it went through a voting process like they're supposed to, but why didn't they do it to themselves? So it shows people. And when Eisenhower's famous speech in 61, Eisenhower said about the military-industrial complex, he already saw what was happening here from 51 to 61, and then he knew what was going to happen from 61 to present day.
Right. And I think what we need to see too, as we kind of transition a little bit more into this, and I'm sure Derek's going to bring up his own kind of questions on here with this too, is that what he's talking about is the military areas, because unfortunately, when you have SCOTUS and you have Congress, Senate, and presidency, along with the other, the other legal arms out there, the federal courts and the state courts, when they can't even follow the Constitution, there's another part that you have to catch, is that there's two constitutions going on at the same time. One constitution started in 1770, well, 1780s, but then the real constitution that they're playing around with, that they wanted to put into place, was in 1871, when the Corporation of America was reformed. And when that was happening, we saw that gentle kind of changes into the Fed in 1913, and then the changes of 1933. And then we have the changes of what Roosevelt was doing. Then we move, gently over into every war from Korea on was just a conflict and really run by Congress, which was the direct arm of the Fed. And so now we've got the central bankers all being in charge of this thing. And
Which is what's
so,
important for the people too, as well. Interjecting really fast.
no,
National emergencies were never meant to declare a national emergency and to keep going from president to president. So I got people out there saying that too. That's like, oh, well, presidents do this all the time. No, they weren't meant for that. When they declared
exactly.
a national emergency, Congress was supposed to have a joint resolution for it then, not to prolong it and to make it a 20-year war that Congress, the rhinos, made out of money. See, those
Right.
national emergencies were never supposed to be. First off, they're not even constitutional if you want to get down to it, which is what Donald Trump and them are saying. They're saying in different ways. They're not saying it yet in the sense of just verbally, but they're showing you in other ways that we're using the corporation against them, and they're going to clean it out, expose the corporation by what they did, but then set us back on, like we talked about, our original foundation.
Right. And so, I mean, and most of you, if you've studied a little NESARA stuff, and you've listened to my channel a little bit, NESARA, there is a fund of money, and it's part of it is there's different funds of money out there. One of them is the Saint Germain Fund, and we'll just talk about that one because the other ones are more humanitarian kind of thing. But the Saint Germain Fund's a real powerful piece. And what that does is brings in money for humanity. And that's really where we're going to open up a lot of the debt forgiveness areas for the nations and for the people. One of the things that happened is they kept trying, the white hats and what I call the anti-cabal were trying over and over again to bring in the money. Now, 9/11 occurred, and they were trying to bring in the money, but they married a little bit with the cabal, and of course, they did the unthinkable. I don't think the cabal realized how evil that they were going to do when they accomplished 9/11. But one of the things that had to occur is that then when they were trying to bring in, and one of the things that most people don't realize, and there's interesting movies that you can kind of watch, and I was flipping by one of my setups on my things called the Plex server, is Too Big to Fail. And I love bringing that one up because, it's the Fed bankers that are sitting in front of the Treasury chairman, and I'm blanking out who the other guy was in the movie kind of thing. And they're reluctantly taking this sort of amount of money, and I think it's 250, it could be 150 billion, but I don't remember the exact number here. And I have it in my book here, Revelations of the Red Pill. But what they were doing is they show that they were reluctant to take this. Now, these are the tier one banks that are taking this. What you don't know is those tier one banks are the Fed. I mean, you're not talking about like some separation of church and state kind of thing. That's the Fed. And so this is happening in 2009 when the stock market is tanking, and they're supposedly taking $150 billion. But that's not what they took. They took $83 trillion. You guys don't have a clue at what they were doing. They were taking the amount of money that we needed to wipe out the debts of not just the debts of America, but the debts of the Fed. And then they gave $47 trillion to all of the other nations, and they had it apportioned out, perfectly apportioned out. And they took it inside of that little too big to fail kind of end of the movie. When you see that little piece, that's the part that people don't realize. But what that kind of pushed them to is saying, we can't utilize the same transmission of money. Now, how does money transmit here? People don't realize is that I keep using this conversation, is that when you pick up your checkbook and you look, there's two sets of numbers on your checkbook. One is your account number, and the other one is a routing number. And if you ask bankers, they tell you, well, that's just to identify the location of the bank. I don't have to identify the location of the bank. I can go and look it up on Google, right? I mean, I don't have to identify the location of a hospital that I was trying to be at, that I'm telling where the insurance where they're going to be, or if I'm trying to like a car insurance with a car repair shop, right? I mean, when you're trying to connect those things, because they're wanting to bill you and you're going, no, it's the car repair, the body shop who's doing the thing, and the auto insurance needs to pay it, right? You get the idea. And what it is all done by account numbers and addresses, right? But only the Fed has this unique thing called routing numbers. Routing numbers is the connector between every single transmission you ever do of funds. And so what they did is and this is how they stole funds. So I'm going to show you when we kind of finish some of this stuff too. When we take away that piece, it's one of the most critical cuts that they're going to do, and it's not done yet. The day that it happens, I believe that Derek's conversation of the EBS is ready. Because when that thing is cut, you have completely wiped out. You've said the cabal is ready to go. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have a little bit of ratties running around here and chasing through the cities and stuff like that. But what you've done is you've taken out the big bosses. But when you cut that thing, it's going to mess up a lot of different areas. It's going to mess up the banks. It's going to mess up some of the payment points. It's going to mess up some of those areas, and it changes that kind of idea. But when the supposedly, I think it was a couple years ago. Do you remember when the IRS said that they were going to like watch every transaction over $600? Remember?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was like, this is stupid. They already see every transmission that you do anyway, because the routing number is every time you pay, unless you pay with cash, okay? Unless you pay with your physical cash, they know every single transmission every time you do it. So if I take,
that's them telling on themselves. Right?
It is.
It's what they're doing.
It is, but it also is a connection between Bank A and Bank B. So when I take checks in as a business owner, I take checks in and then I do my deposit slip. It show on the deposit slip, I have these printed out deposit slips, okay? It shows my routing number. So it tells everything about account numbers and routing numbers, but each check that I'm depositing shows a routing number of the particular bank, okay? This is part of the NESARA stuff that we've got to do. In 2010, they realized they had to cut the cord, okay? So guess what? That's when we had these unique things called the cryptos. By the way, I've been learning some of this stuff about this. Well, at the same time, we had these weird things called the Bitcoin stuff. The Bitcoin stuff had this thing called a blockchain. What blockchain does is it finds where information is, and it knows exactly. So if Derek gives me $100 and then I take out of that $100, I buy 25 bucks of gas, which only gets me a quarter tank of gas, right? And then if I buy $25 of candy, which I shouldn't have candy anymore, and then it knows those two different transmission points, okay? Especially if I use the credit card for that. or the Bitcoin thing. And so it separates out those, okay? And then if we wanted to, in that way, we could actually see the transmission point that's out there. Now, with the reason why we have the Bitcoin stuff and the reason why the three-letter agencies love it is that it's invisible from the Fed. So they don't have to actually show off their stuff. And so that's another little piece of this. Okay. So one of the things that we had to do, and I remember studying a lot of the NESARA documentation and this NESARA conversations way before. I mean, the gold-backed currency, and I kept hearing blockchain back in 2010. But I was like, okay, so is it going to be Bitcoin? I mean, what is it? And I just kept being told by the people, blockchain. And I was like, what is that? I don't know if I've ever gotten into this. If you guys haven't watched me before, I don't know if I've actually shared it this way. I did this with Patriot Underground. I know you've been on his show too. He says hi. But I was sharing some weird things like this too. But in the blockchain point, what blockchain does is it knows every single stop. Like, when you're going and you plug in your maps in your car and it knows every stop there. Well, that's the same thing that blockchain does. And yet these three-letter agencies don't want everyone to know it. So it's a protected blockchain. Okay. So they needed to have a new system. And from 2010, they started to create what's called the quantum financial system. Now, in 2019, they came up with a quantum, the QSI, and I'm blanking it out here. I just caught it at the wrong second here. But the QSI kind of idea, the quantum initiative, basically, is that the initiatives are what they were trying to do. And they weren't just trying to do this for money, but they were trying to do it with transmissions for universities and all kinds of different ways, because the Fed and all the different things have had tentacles in all those areas. And so NESARA is really, really key to all this. So what the QFS, what the quantum financial system is about, and Charlie Ward's talked about this too, is that it had to be, I always kind of try to explain it like this. It's a server in essence. So if you have an old server that really sucks, okay, my son puts together, computers all the time, and he has an old server that's really sucking. What you do is you keep it going while you build a new server, right? And you got the fast server over here, and you test it. And so if you have output points, like a TV that's picking up that server, or another computer that's picking out the server, they're testing them, and they're both, you don't really know which one they're coming from. But you can look at the sourcing. I mean, you can look at sources. That's how servers kind of work. Look back end sourcings. And when you realize, oh, the sample rate's really good, there you go, right? And so that's how you kind of watch it. Well, this is so complicated. They started it in August of 2020. And at that time frame, which is the exact time frame, if you listen to Derek, when they deleted his loan, right?
Right.
They took away your loan. And why? Because the veterans are the most important point of this. And I'm not trying to say that, they're more important than, someone else, but well, maybe I am, because we haven't been taking care of our veterans for generations right now. And so I'm loving it that the veterans lost all their student loans. Now, I don't know if every veteran did, but a huge portion of them. But that's
25,000.
Okay, well then there you go. There's a ton of guys that were off, and women that were off of that.
Well, so they use this as an example. As we know, it's like everything's an example. What they did is said, if you're 100% disabled veteran, President Trump said this in a speech, August 2020. He said this in a speech. Failing to remember where he was, but it was live, his speech. And he says, if you're a 100% disabled veteran, we're going to take out your student loans. And there was some other stuff he said, but when he said student loans, I was like, whoa, that's me.
Yeah,
That's
you were
me. Well,
listening at
then,
that point. You were like, hey, I know.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
me. Well, I had a little loan that I'd taken out between my mom and dad paid for my first stint when I went to the University of Alabama. They paid for that, but then in between, I took out, and I'd already paid just about half of it off. So it wasn't like I was not paying it. I'd already paid down a good portion of it, at a time, and so that was August 2020. He says this in a speech. You did. You had to get a little. There was not a memorandum. There was something was put out. You had to submit it to the VA, and then from August to October. October is when I got the letter. So they wiped it. They would have wiped it out instantly. Yeah, but then you got your official letter in
Right.
October, and it's official. Stamp tells you, hey, it's wiped out. Da 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 da. And hey,
I got
whatever.
I got dozens and dozens of people over the years. And frankly, I've talked to a lot of other truthers saying the same thing. They got dozens of people that were seeing their loans taken out. And what it was, now this was a more purposeful point, but it was a sampling. Okay. And I don't want you to focus. I mean, because I know the left and the right are talking about, well, it's not fair to take out, student loans. And I'm like, bah humbug, guys, stop with that. Stop with the fairness conversation. First off, veterans did way more than you want to know, and they did so many things, and we don't take care of them in many ways. So that's just one point that I'm going to say out there. But secondarily, the way that loans are done, with whether it's a house, a car, a credit card to a student loan, or whatever you want to pick up, are done so illegally. Loans have to be under a contract law. And if Derek enters into a contract with Scott, he has to fulfill the contract, but not one secured loan ever is signed by the contractor, which is the bank. Never are signed. Why? Because then they can't get sued. I can't come up with a time when I'm sure you might have, you can tell me one, but I can't think of a time where banks get sued. Normally it's the title agency or this agency or that agency or the guy, and he loses his house, and it's all those other things, right? It's the mortgage, the guy that was paying the amount or the three-port point. It's not the original bank that actually has the loan, and so it's all based upon the illegal nature of the contract law. But the secondary point that happens in there is compound interest, and compound interest has long been known as something as bondage. It is the way that we have bondage, and it keeps you in a debt slavery system. And to give you a little bit, and I know a lot of people talk about this, but there's a conversation about debt jubilee in the Bible. And so people talk about, well, every 7 years they had to do debt jubilee. Well, was it because the king was all friendly and super nice because he was a good guy? Like Jehoshaphat was a good guy. It was because the king owned everything. And then the servants, he did the debt jubilee, and then they went along, and he owned everything anyway. But then by the end of the 7 years, they had no money. They had no money to even feed themselves. They were dying. He had to wipe the debts out anyway. But guess what happens when you live on debt? When you live on debt, there is an end point. And everyone knows it. Do you know, and I could go back on this one, but I don't want to do that because it's a longer story. 2020 was always known as the time frame when the debt was going to run out. Now, if Scott and Derek had the keys to the kingdom, we would have flipped that sucker over, right? You did it from the
Exactly.
military side. Scott would have done it from the financial side. We would have said, boom, let's flip this over and let's go into the, and Trump's in office and all the bad boys are gone. That's how I would have done it. That's how Derek would have done it. I promise you. But here's what we saw, and we're sitting here on April 19th, one day away from Hitler's birthday, and my birthday's coming up on Friday. That's why I never really liked my birthday, because it was all these other ugly birthdays of, of all these gross time frames, Columbine and all this other stuff, right? But what happens on this time frame of 2023, what we've done is we've led them to a bankruptcy. We've wiped out the corporations. What do you think is happening in Chicago right now? Derek talked about this. What is the military's job? Is to wipe out the crime issue, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the other part of this is that Walmart should be making a ton of money. If you go back in 2020, they were making money hand over fist. How come they tell you that they haven't been making any money for, they say time immemorial? And I'm going, wait, so you're closing 20 stores and you haven't been making anything in Chicago? What? Sounds like a lie to me, right? But here's the point, guys. They had to bankrupt everything, because what the NESARA stuff is to bankrupt them and make them pay for everything. This is what the Saint Germain Fund is, this kitty. And the little kitty is sitting here with a burgeoning amount of money, and they knew this was going to happen. So they had to put money into the kitty, okay? But they knew what it was going to cost. It's because they stole from them, or the cabal stole from the anti-cabal back in 2008 and 2001. And so what they were doing is they're just taking it all back. And what it's going to happen is there's going to be a full-on debt forgiveness. It's not because Derek was a good guy and he was nice and he said his prayers at night, okay? It's not because Scott, didn't kick the dog as he walks out the front door. It's because the debts are illegal. Simply put, okay? And by the way, when militaries go in, they don't sit around and figure out, well, you're a nice guy, you're a good guy. You know what? If you got on that uniform of the other guy, we're going to shoot you and going to shoot you dead, right? We don't aim to like hit you in the shoulder kind of thing. Aiming for the head or the heart, right? I mean,
right.
We're going to take you out. And that's what they're doing, but they're wiping them out. And all that money is flowing in. So all the stuff from Amazon and Walmart and all these other locations are flowing into this. And when it pops, it starts like popcorn. When that thing pops, it starts popping out in debt forgiveness. We start noticing that it goes into a gold-backed currency. And I'm not even allowed to share what I do know, but I'm telling you, it nearly is there. I wish I could tell you, but it's so close.
I mean, the one that you can tell is what I've already told. It's already in a bill. People can go read it.
Yep.
Texas, right? Which is what's cool about this. Donald John Trump, Commander-in-Chief Trump. I don't like calling by his name, but I do like calling by his full name. DJT filed through the SCOTUS, United States Supreme Court, via the state of Texas,
right,
versus
on purpose
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia, on purpose, because also when you go read the January 2021 continuity directive, it's actually called the executive branch, reconstitution of the executive branch alone. In section 2.3, it says if you can't, if the new seat of government cannot be established in Washington, D.C.,
right.
Congress, with its enumerated powers with the states, will set a new place. And it talks about construction of it and procurement of it. Well, guess where? The very first state with a bill that you can go read says it says effective September the 1st, 2023 for gold-backed digital currency.
Right.
Texas.
And so It's not going to be, by the way, and I know everyone's talking about the CBDCs, the central bank digital currency, blah blah blah. Okay, that's like your Uncle Henry who comes in and he's always got the best idea, but he never has any money. Now he wants to open up like 5 new shoe stores, and he goes, but I need a little money to get the 5 new shoe stores. And you're going, you know what? You've already stolen from me 5 times. I'm not going to give you enough money to open up 5 new shoe stores. That's what CBDC is. They are losing money hand over fist. It's the first time in the history of the Fed that they're in a negative equity. Do you know why Kevin McCarthy won't settle with the White House to raise the debt ceiling? It's because they're going to make them choke on it, and you're not paying for it. So it's the federal the Fed and all of its fiat money is going to get shoved down their throat, and you're just going to see this flip over into a new currency. It's like you used to have an old Monopoly game and it was just kind of crappy, so you bought a new Monopoly game and now you're going to set up the new Monopoly game with the new money, right? And it's the same kind of thing. It's a one-to-one kind of point. So you don't have to sit around and worry about like what about the $20 bill I have? Well, you can take it to the bank or you could spend it. You're going to have
Or your 401ks. People ask about their 401ks, and I'm like,
it's all going to switch. It's all. I mean, listen, the quantum financial system is so, and we've been hearing about this for a long time. But the quantum financial system, okay, if you have an Experian credit report, and your Experian credit report, and I have people argue with me all the time that we talk about the debt to income ratio, right? And people go, well, they don't always take your debt to income ratio. And I'm like, oh my God, do you not know that every single time someone puts a credit report in, it's just uploading into your Experian or pick the credit report or TransUnion or whatever. It's just uploading into it. So it's just adding to the report and changing it a little bit. The credit companies send out their credit statements, so it's always updating. It's an old system. All that system is being mirrored into the QFS. And it's been testing for almost 3 years. So what it does is it makes you, here's the cool part, guys, it's going to make you completely sovereign. You are outside of the system. The IRS can't see you. The Fed can't see you. The Congress can't try to re-tax you again. The banks won't be able to do anything about it. Now, some people go, well, what's going to happen to the bank? Well, let's just say if you have a local bank that's a good bank, we do believe that they're going to have some payment from the QFS to pay them off, because you can't kill off the banks. But here's one of the things that happens. Trump is this master bankruptcy specialist. You guys don't catch how cool this is. He's been creating a bankruptcy ever since he left office. He's bankrupting them. He just let them be stupid. And they're playing checkers while he's playing chess over there. And it's like they're dummies. And that's why the 17th letter keeps talking about that, that moronic stuff over there. They're dumb, they're stupid. And it's because what we've done is we've wiped away all the smart ones. You put the smarties in jail and you let the dummies kind of run the outhouse. And that's why every time Biden says something, or John Fetterman today started doing his first like group meeting, and it was like, can you just do an AA meeting instead of this one? Because it was painful to watch. And it's because they're trying to show you how stupid they are with this.
Well, President Trump he specifically said all crimes and evidence will be displayed to the public in full accordance with the law. And that's what they're doing. They're exposing all these people.
Every one of it. Yeah.
Putting them on display, and they're making them look dumb. They're making them look stupid. They're making them look childish. They're making them look immature. They're making them look all these ways. They're smearing them in the right kind of way, in the sense of They're making you show this. That's why they look. That's why he don't look anything like the actual Fetterman, right? That's why
Yep.
everybody don't look the same.
Yep.
And I also want to tell you too, like a
Yeah.
point in here. There's another thing. I was on with FCB Deco last night, and I love his intro, and it showed President Trump. And of course, there's so many speeches you can pull from President Trump, but there was one where he's doing his famous face where he's going, doing like that, and he's specifically, this is his comment. He said, "Pretty soon I'm gonna have to go away for a little while because I'm
Yes,
pissing off.
he
I'm
did.
pissing off a lot of rich guys, and they don't like it." Right. Well, that's what we're talking about right now. Right. We're talking about all these feds. We're talking about all these illegal activities they've done for years, years and years, even longer than I was born. That's why, like the 1968, we left the gold standard at the 72, the shock of 72. And what people have to understand really fast, these rhinos, they made the dollar as valuable as they wanted it to, or invaluable as they wanted to.
Right.
That's why nothing we've ever had, especially since the Gold Standard Act was abolished, especially when we went to this new level, right, of career politicians. It's as valuable as they want it to be, and invaluable. So it does, like, this is truly like we're in the most biblical, monumental, historical time period to be alive, and that's why it's exciting. It's nothing to fear. It's nothing to be
But
scared of.
you
You
know what
know,
he did? You know what he's doing though too, and this is the coolest part. When he started talking about he's going to take out 80, 75, 85%, whatever whatever
okay,
point of that, it's going to do it very simply because when you get down to the petty criminals, it's real simple with those guys. They live on cash.
exactly.
There is a series called Reacher. You can watch it on Amazon, I think. It's Jack Reacher. You've seen the movies, kind of thing. The whole Reacher
Exactly.
series, I can finish in fixing the gold-backed currency. Because in the series, they're the whole thing. I mean, this little 9-part series or whatever is all about them, making their own currency down in wherever, Alabama or whatever it is. And the point is like, we can fix this in 5 seconds, because when you flip into a new currency, what's going to happen is criminals try to get their hands on the new currency and they can't. Why
Okay.
won't they? Because they're going to have to go to the bank to get the currency. Here's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to walk into the bank and they're going to have to bring their old currency in. And it's just going to be a whole bunch of DEA agents and real good ones, okay, the real agents that are the right ones. And they're just going to wipe these idiots out left and right. It is the simplest sting in the history of the world. You guys are in for a treat. When you
Exactly.
see, and it's post EBS, but this is part of the NESARA thing. That's why, I mean, do not talk to me about like the 1,000-year reign. Listen, we have a tribulation down the road. That's what the word says. There's a 7-year tribulation, years from now, and then there's the millennial reign. But that's a whole different set of conversations. But we have a real turbulent time after the EBS, because there's going to be like, what's going on? I mean, people are going to be freaking. And yet, my father-in-law who doesn't trust the government, he's not going to worry about him. He's going to walk in there with his cash. And why did you have that much cash? I didn't trust anyone. They're not going to worry about him. He's going to be fine, right? And he gets his money, and they give him the new U.S. note that it's gold back 1-to-1. No big deal. Okay,
Right.
you don't have to worry about it. But the criminals, they're going to be flick, 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 flick. I mean, they're going to knock them over like just dominoes. And it's so simple. It's because none of them have a bank account. None of them.
Exactly.
And it's the coolest thing in the history of the world when you realize how simple the QFS will pull in all of your debts. It'll pull in all of your bank account stuff, and it will pull in your simple IRA, your 401k kind of stuff. It's going to put them all in there together. You're going to have the Privacy Act of this. For years, we've read the NESARA thing, and I didn't get it. I was like, How are you going to let the person be private? So I want you to look at Derek for just a second. He's going to have a QFS account, whatever. If they use his social security number just because he's so used to it, okay, I mean, don't get worried about it, okay? And so he's going to have his own social security number or his own QFS number. He's going to get in there and he's going to be able, just like he could do with his credit report, it's just going to be a little extra thing. And he's going to be able to see all the different accounts. He can access anything. He can move $100 to Scott, which he's got to move $100 to Scott. Messing with him. But he can move money all around. He doesn't need a bank anymore. Now, if he wants to utilize a bank, he can. But you probably would, because you'd be moving cash around. But again, there's going to be physical cash too, and it's all gold backed. And it's going to adjust the economy in ways that you can't imagine. And so it's going to be just very fun, but it's a lot more simple than we make it out to be. So hope that helps you guys when you're talking about that too. Did you have
That's
any
why all these laws.
comments?
Well, that's why all these laws and orders matter, because just like the EO 13818 we addressed in the first part, but every part of this adds into every little detail. The QFS, which are our main talking points, are QFS, and then also we talk about the EAS, the EBS, the emergency alert system, which is going to be the thing that kicks it all off. Right. None of us know that. None of us know when it is, but we can judge by what President Trump's saying. Just like yesterday, that video, everything is getting closer. You talk about homeless veterans, taking the homeless off the streets. But also he addressed the fact that, hey, law-abiding citizens shouldn't have to walk down filthy streets. Right. So we're getting closer to this when it goes. And it's nothing to fear, though. It's like I've been trying to tell people, it's nothing to fear at all. Like, it's nothing. Like we're finally, it's like finally getting a relief in a different way. It's like finally it's like when you study 4 or 5 hours for a final. If you ever took went to college, people who know that feeling, and you're finally through it. And it's that meltdown of your mind. To me, I'm like, oh man, we are living through we're in biblical, monumental, historical, iconic brilliancy. I was explaining earlier on the show. You think of all these, just take the executive orders alone. You take all it, when you go read executive orders, one executive, in the first paragraph, there's about 3 more codes, 3 more acts, 3 more this that coincide with it. When you go read those acts, all this stuff to come together, there's nothing. It's nothing short of biblical. So I'm glad that you finally got to address that, because so many people have been asking me, and I'm like, look, I get the shell of it. I know what Executive Order 13885 was, the Quantum Advisory Committee. There's your committee that started. And then you had the Quantum Initiative, right? And then quantum.gov, which was launched September 2021. It's like showing people that, look, if you trust the man, trust the plan. Right. It's the same thing with God. Same thing too. If you trust God, then trust his word, trust his plan. It works both ways. But it's like I tell people, a lot of these people are Trump supporters. And I'm like, look, this is the very thing he put into place. He absolutely has his hands all over this in the fabric. And I have pictures in my documents, more so of him being more of the QFS than it was anything else, because he's in pictures. And it's got quantum physics behind him massive.
Does he really?
Master.
Is that cool?
He's the master. He is the mastermind, like you said, of bankruptcy, right? The art of the deal. A lot of people don't understand bankruptcy is an actual business. You learn this in business school. You learn sometimes it's a strategy, right? Because
it is. But there's 2 different types of bankruptcies too. Now, let's stop for a second on that one too. There's a couple different ways that you have to do it with, federal corporations kind of thing, or major corporations. Now, this is a Scott prediction, okay, because I can't prove this, but I think we already saw one of them in Twitter. I think you guys saw when we talked a little about the Elon Musk and the 20 billion that really was to 44 billion that he spent for. and now he's X corporation, that's a bankruptcy. That is a refile to a bankruptcy. So there's two different types of bankruptcy points. There is bankruptcy closure. That's what everyone's so used to. When I say bankruptcy, people think you're just wiping them out. And I'm like, no, 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 no. There's a second type of one. It's a bankruptcy reorganization. With some of these national firms that we can't live without, what we do is we lop the head off of these suckers, okay? And you basically take, let's make up something, Chase Bank. You wipe out all of the idiots. You tell them, you guys lose all of your loans. You have to, there's a set of money that we're going to put aside that if anyone wants to get their money out, they can get their money out. And by the way, they're probably going to get wiped down to a very small amount. I don't know exactly what they're going to be, but what you've done is done a reorganization point. And I think the Twitter thing was that first reorganization, just in your face point. And we're not seeing that because we're not looking at it in the right way. So I think that you're going to see a lot more of this, but it's you're not looking for it in the same way. And that's what you do, because what we might also see is some of these firms like the Twitter and the Facebook and the other ones become public utilities. So what they become is just a utility point, and they're actually, Congress has talked about this. They become a utility that you can't, kind of thing, like you can't do without. And so because they were run so badly, you're talking about a bankruptcy event too. So guys, there's some really cool things, and you just got to be calm, because every single massive event, and I love saying this, but D-Day of 1944, it was ugly. Everyone was against them. They had to turn every one of the spies into a double agent. They had to keep Patton up in the north to Pas-de-Calais so that he kept the Panzers sitting up there near in the Pas-de-Calais. He kept them in there for 3 weeks after the invasion, even though Hitler wanted to move, everyone else wanted to move it. And they said, no, we think Patton and the First Army is going to come down. And he said, and he would not move the Panzers down, because he could have knocked out a huge portion of the Normandy landings. And that was a way of, and that deception, that disinformation / misinformation stuff that they were doing is exactly what we're living through right now. I hate it. Derek hates it. He hates to be in it. He'd love to be able to tell you it happens on X date, but it's an event with that. I mean, so do you want to throw in some things on that kind of point too?
People just have to understand. I mean, anything that we've ever read in history, no one applies to people that were living through it during that time period. I mean, the Revolutionary War took 9 years. So we're just in 7 years right now. So of what we're doing, and it's like, I'm not saying that you should enjoy pain ever in one way, but then again, pain and anger are the same thing. Pain you feel because you're focused on it. Anger, you can still have pain, but if you get angry about it, then you can divert your pain to anger, right? And go, you really think, I mean, sure, you get used to it if you played any kind of physical kind of sport, but I didn't like getting hit playing football, right? I didn't like getting hit, but I liked hitting.
Yeah.
Right. I like doing a hit, but I didn't like getting hit.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. It's a mindset, right? And so when you look at what we're going through, was it desirable? No. Could they have gone in and could the military formed in just like that and clean this up? Yeah, sure, they could have, but will we learn anything from it? No, probably not. Will we appreciate it? I joke about, I'm sitting in Nashville, Tennessee right now. I lived here 11 years of my life off and on, but they call Nashville a 10-year town, right? To get your first hit. It took me 12 years. So, like, but if I'd have moved to town and got it the first or second year, third year, would I appreciated it? Well, it
No,
depends on
you
your
wouldn't.
attitude. But me personally, no, I needed that 12 years, right? And then it's like, so it could you? Sure, I guess you could be appreciative the first year, but I think when you have to go through some things, you have to go through some trials, you have to go through some tests, you have to go through whatever it is of white bread and vine of sausages for the same meal every day,
Yeah.
right? Like sacrificing, right? You had to drive cars that weren't desirable or that didn't make you look like the Mr. Hotshot or whatever it was, right? There's things you go through, right, that makes you more appreciative when you do get to go, this medium rare steak, or whatever it is. Like if you're a person of appreciation, then you'll look at that steak and go, I used to look down here and that was this, and now I'm eating this. It's all right here, right? And this is why this is your law degree, this is your master's degree, this is whatever you have. Like you don't have to be a veteran, you don't have to have years of experience. Whatever you have, it all starts right here. And Einstein talks about this. A lot of different people talk about this. This is right here. It's right here. It's all right here. Look at amateur golfer. He never turned pro. Bobby Jones. He said golf is a game played 6 inches between the
Right.
ears.
Right.
And golf really is that game. Golf is a game you cannot blame on anybody unless they're talking in your backswing or the crowd roars. In a minute. Other than that, it is all on you.
Right.
And that's what I try to tell people is that look, enjoy this. In the military, we had sergeants that what they say, and it's on T-shirts now. Embrace the suck, right? So, but you're not going to always be in this. You're not always going to go through this. There's going to be days you're going to be right up here, and you're going to look back on this and go, man, that's what that was for. And that's what I try to tell people that you're going through right now is that, look, this is a major clean out. And guess what? A majority of people are not having to be a part of that clean out process up here that the military is doing. And that's why I have more appreciation for what we're going through because as a prior service member, I know what those guys are going through on a different level. And even then, I give more kudos to them because they're actually going through it. I'm not. I'm getting to sit back and root them on and go, hey, I'm here for you, brother, here for your sister, but they're going through it every single day. And so it's more of a appreciation point from that standpoint that there are people, boots on the ground, boots in the sky, boots everywhere, men and women all over the world, not just the U.S.,
Right.
that are doing this.
And I think that's a really powerful point because the reality is, I mean, and by the way, I didn't say this, but it's about taking care of people on Social Security and disability and the veterans and the homeless. And by the way, homeless is really important too, because that's where the humanitarian money has been saved up for. Some people want to talk about, they're going to get their bond money back and get millions of dollars. And I'm like, stop. Okay. That money is really saved so that we can build out the cities again. I mean, the cities are atrocious right now. We need to like really release some funds in the right kind of way so that we can rebuild things. Okay. And when you talk about this, and this, many of the homeless have got a lot of psychological issues. They're not only on the street because of a lack of money, but of their psychological problems. So we're going to have a lot of counseling things. And there's going to be humanitarian funds to be able to set up to help do that kind of things. That's what NESARA is about. When you start realizing what your job is, and I keep telling people, I've got a whiteboard sitting over here, and my wife's got a whiteboard in her office, okay? You guys need to invest $30 in a whiteboard and some dry erase pens and start writing down what God is putting on your heart. I guarantee you, I never thought I would be talking on a microphone. Do you know that I'm a stutterer? Did you know that? Did you know that most people go, you won't make it through high school? That was about all you would do. And I got through my doctoral program. It's because I didn't listen to that stuff. Okay. And I put goals out there. I can guarantee you, Derek, did you ever imagine that you'd be talking like this instead of singing on stage?
No, no, I didn't. Only God.
Right. So
You know,
so
yeah, no,
guess what God he's going to be doing what this is why I'm saying you need to be supporting Derek and in this way too, because Derek is going to be he is going to be one of those leaders. And I'm saying this in the spirit. He's going to be one of those leaders to teach all the people that are asleep and they're waking up and they're going, wait, what just happened? And people are going to reach out to and they're going to say, you know, this church or this lecture hall or whatever that is, and they're going to say, we need the Derricks in here. And I pray that they're asking me too, but there's a ton of different people out there that I have on my iPhone of different people that are going to come out and teach some of this stuff, because what has been taught is all fiat currency, is all old school stuff. It's all the Fed and all the stuff that is dead. Okay. Now we have to do what happened and why it happened the way that it did. And that's what Derek can do. And that's why it's really going to be powerful there.
I agree. That's our next step after everything, the National Guard, everything that's been proclamated that's going to take place. That's what we're going to be doing. So,
Right.
um, but man, I'm glad we got to do this because I'm like, man, I told a bunch of buddies, so I give them a shout out, John and John. I said we're gonna have
I
to,
remember you telling me about that.
we got to quit having buddies named John. I'm like, we gotta either or you all get nicknames, and if you don't like it, tough luck.
Right. JJ,
But
you're
you
John,
know, but
Jonathan.
man,
Right. Yeah.
but so this guy, give them shouts out. But there's a lot of people who are looking forward to it. Kathy and business manager Natalie, and so many people. I was like, man, I believe you'll get a lot out of that. And it is. It's so many people. Once again, not them necessarily, but just people. That make it complicated. We're here to say, look, it's this simple. Gotta quit focusing on all this other stuff out here.
Yeah. Focus
It's
on
laws, orders.
exactly.
Yeah,
Focus on, we're going to focus on, and he's going to be looking, I think Derek's going to be looking backward. Okay. And helping a lot of people. I'm going to be looking more forward when we talk on the back end with that too. History is very important. Okay. I'm a minor historian as well, but history is very important, but we're going to have both sides looking these ways.
absolutely.
And because guess what? If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Um,
Exactly.
and to end up with this one, do you know that Eisenhower actually wrote a speech on the day of D-Day, the morning of D-Day, and he wrote a speech of how the D-Day landings weren't successful. And he wrote this speech, and it was like, it was all my fault. I know we didn't, we failed. And he wrote this failure speech because he was ready for the possibility of that. Now, the reality, the guys, is Trump and the White Hats set this up. There is no way to fail because there is no fallback position here.
Mm.
There is no fallback position. If America falls, the whole world falls. And that is
Right.
true. But the reality is that's why America is this big battleground that we've never really been that way in the past from a battlefield perspective, other than Civil War. But we're seeing that point in time of this is the reason for it. And it is a financial war, but it is about the kids, and it is about the injustice things. When you focus on those things and you start looking outward and saying, what can I do? That will make a difference in your life too. Any last thoughts about what's happening for you?
No, I think we covered it all today. I mean, but yeah, but I do like that idea. I try to tell people, look, I mean, picture two guys got each other's back. Like you got the front, I'm watching the back. So it's like we have to have it all. And then I tell people too to quit focusing on certain personal beliefs.
Right.
There's just some people you're never gonna to get. I mean, if you believe that God operates this way and Christ operate, okay, but like that, some of it's not worth fighting over, some of it's not worth losing friends over, some of it's not, some of this stuff is like, I just tell people all the time, look in your mirror before you look out your window.
Right.
Right. And, there's just some people you're never going to influence on, your personal beliefs, and that you're not supposed to influence them. You're
Right.
supposed to live your life as an example. If you got something they want, they'll ask you for it. They'll ask you, hey, how come you always positive? How come you're always smiling? How come you're always this? And, and they say, well, glad you asked. And then you tell them. And that still don't mean that they're going to do it, right? Because everybody has to come to that realization in their life, whatever it may be, whatever a personal belief is. But this that we're talking about, it affects everybody, it affects the world. And
It
it's an
does.
exciting time to be alive.
I want
So
to
I'm
end it off with this one thing. I mean, we've been just hearing about
cool.
this recently. I know you've talked with them a lot, but SGNon, his wife, just kind of put out a thing that he's having a spinal surgery right now, and he is really in pain. He's canceled all of his things. We need to be praying over him. So I just want you guys to be, I don't care if you're watching this thing video in a week and a half or 3 weeks from now, I don't care. I want you to be praying on this way. So guys, can we just pray for a minute here? Lord Jesus, we just come to you right now and we lift up our friend SGNon, and we just ask that you would have the blood of Jesus all the way down his spine, that it is completely healed. We just thank you, Lord God, that you touch his spine so he is healed in Jesus' name with that. And we just put around my family, and we put around Derek's family a hedge of protection, that as we kind of go out there into the world, that we have that hedge of protection. But we just also lift up all the people that are listening to this, that they feel a comfort, they feel something off of their shoulders, they feel that burden off of them, that they don't have to do anything, that they just have to rest, that my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I just thank you so much, God, that you do that. And we just pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you so much.
Well, sounds good, and we'll be seeing you soon. I know that we got some interesting days ahead, and it's getting closer and closer. So we'll be seeing you soon, and it's always good to. Now that I can say it's our second time, I say it's good to be here. It's always good to be here.
All right, man. All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate you.